Welcome everybody to the show. My name is Sunil. Thank you for tuning in to So Real Sports Talk. We have a very special guest, Grant Cohn, writer for on the 49ers for Sports Illustrated, owner of one of the largest 49er YouTube channels in all of the land. One of my mentors, somebody who has helped me gain this platform for myself, the illustrious Grant Cohn. Thank you so much, Grant, for coming on the show with me today, man.
My pleasure, and thank you for the wonderful introduction. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no worries. And, Grant, I know when we initially started talking about my channel, I told you one of the things that I wanted to do was kind of give a platform for some of our most favorite sports personalities and the fans to get to learn a little bit about them from just the day-to-day interaction that they have with them. So when I thought about this segment, So Real Conversations, you were the first person I had in mind. So I'm glad that, we were able to make it happen. So once again, thank you, my man.
I hope we can keep it real enough.
We always do. So
yeah.
I kind of wanted to start just from the beginning. Just a little overview. Tell us a little bit about where you grew up and what kind of kid was Grant Cohn?
Grew up in Oakland, California, in the hills.
Area.
Yeah. My parents are a lot older than me. They were 42 when they had me. Okay. And I have one sibling who's my half brother. We have the same mom, although we're very close. But he's 12 years older than me. So I was kind of born into like a established, grown-up family with like levels of irony and sarcasm that I didn't really get when I was young. Okay. So I've always been around like older, sophisticated, intellectual type people trying to keep up with adults. So that's kind of where I come from. Both my parents are writers. My brother's in tech. He's hell smart. So I was always trying to keep up that way. I don't know. What else do you need to know about me? I was like essentially like an only child is what I want to say. My brother went to college when I was 6. So I spent a lot of time talking to myself, a lot of time trying to make friends, I was not cool really in elementary school, middle school. I mean, I think I could always like talk to people, and I was always very concerned with trying to make people like me because I was afraid that no one liked me and I didn't have any friends. So I guess relating to people has been something I've been thinking about since I was a little kid, and maybe it's why I am good at doing it on YouTube with so many different people.
That's amazing. So it makes a lot of sense, I think, obviously coming from more of an intellectual background, some of the ways that you analyze things, that makes a lot of sense. But with as well as you are communicating with so many different people, you wouldn't expect you to be, maybe that awkward child in school where you didn't have like the most friends and whatnot.
Well, I mean, I had friends. I guess I was just insecure. I was really insecure probably until I got into UCLA, and then I flipped and became like the biggest jerk. I was pretty full of myself maybe I still am. Some people would say I still am, but no, I was really insecure as a kid. I guess most kids are,
right?
But I just wanted people to like me, and I was very much an only child, calling people up. Hey, you want to come over? Can I come over to your house? My dad will bring me over. I got a PlayStation. What do you say?
That's amazing. Now, if you just put out something on YouTube, you'll have 100, 200 people wanting to come over and kick it with Grant. So that's amazing how things happen. When did at what point did sports become a major part of your life? Was that always growing up, or is that something that came about later in your life?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. My dad's a sports writer. And so he was around it. I was exposed to the 49ers, the Giants, the Warriors at a very young age. And I guess it was always a way to relate to your dad. I think that's how fandom kind of works for a lot of kids. Like whatever team your dad roots for, you root for, and that's a way to interact and have a relationship. But my dad wasn't rooting. He was just covering the team. So my way of interacting with my dad was to kind of be analytical like him and try to look for the angles, and I love that stuff. I always loved like the stories behind the teams, and asking my dad when I was 4 or 5, what's Steve Young like? What's Jerry Rice like? What's Brent Jones like? And which is funny, when I go out to the bar with any person that that I meet because of YouTube, invariably the conversation goes to, What's Jimmy Garoppolo like? What's Kyle Shanahan like? And that's all. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that I find really, really interesting. It's the kind of stuff that my dad wrote about. It's the kind of stuff that I got into. So that was my introduction to sports, was kind of through sports writing, which is unusual for most people.
Did you ever play growing up, and did you ever have like? Oh, go ahead. Talk about something that you're playing. Like, what sports were you playing growing up?
Okay, so I played baseball. Played Little League. I played mostly center field when I got a little bit older and kids started hitting it out there. I was a good fielder. I was fast. I ran track my senior year of high school and won a gold medal in the Hayward Area Athletic League in the 300 hurdles. I'm 6'1". I got long legs. I'm pretty fast. I ran like a 4.65, so 4.5-ish. I ran a 4.5 on a track with with spikes when I was 18 at UCLA. Nice. My roommate Kike was my witness. He timed it. So I could move a little bit. I was a good fielder. I could steal bases. I could bunt. I was a hell of a bunter. Never hit a home run over a fence in my life, Sunil, and it's one of my big regrets. So I was decent. I never made varsity at Bishop O'Dowd, which is a very good baseball school. But I took it fairly seriously. I played soccer, didn't take that seriously. Made varsity, got benched. Basically, was in it for the varsity letter, and then I played a little lacrosse one year after I got cut from baseball. That was kind of fun. Got knocked around a little bit. That was cool. And then I finally went to track, which is probably what I should have done all along. I was a mediocre athlete. I never really took it that seriously. I had a little bit of natural ability that I never really cultivated, which is why I talk shit for a living, because I was such a great athlete. It puts me in a position to talk on people who are the best.
There it is. There it is. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And talk about, because, obviously we know you're not like the biggest 49er fan, but is there a team that
I was a huge 49er fan growing up?
Okay.
Huge 49er fan growing up. I was a 49er fan in college. What changed was I grew up, I graduated and I knew I wanted to go into sports writing, and I'd been around the industry for a long time. And I knew that if I ever made that decision to get into sports writing, you had to give up fandom. Well, that's just the way I was raised. It's an old school journalistic way of covering a team. I know there's a lot of fan journalists out there, and I'm not knocking them, but that's just the way I was raised. And it didn't seem that hard actually after a while. Like I grew up rooting for Steve Young and Jeff Garcia, but then when I finally got into this team that I was covering, like it was different. And I don't know.
You were not connected.
I wasn't. And I think anyone else, if they're in my position, you got a credential, you covered a team for a year, you wouldn't root for it. You'd have a whole different perspective, because the whole rooting thing is kind of like you kind of idolize players to a certain degree. And once you get to know them and you work with them every day and the interactions are real, like some of them are good, some of them aren't, it's hard to have that same idealistic view of people. It's more like doing business. And that's cool. You don't hate them. It's just more realistic. So I think it's a natural thing that your fandom goes away. I think most beat writers aren't fans. For
sure. You got to be professional at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But you kind of touched on it, which kind of segued into my next question. Talk a little bit about when did you start gaining a passion for journalism, and was that always the career path you expected to take? I mean, you spoke about your parents both being journalists. Was that just kind of in the blood? You knew that this was what you were going to do, or did that come about some way, somehow, where a light flashed and you were like, okay, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life?
Well, my dad's a particular type of journalist. He's a columnist. There's these old school distinctions in newspapers. Like back in the day, there was one person who wrote the news. Those were the beat writers. One person who wrote opinions. Those were the columnists. And the columnist was always kind of like the more sexy position. They got paid a little bit more. They had their face in the paper. The beat writers usually didn't. So my dad was the opinion guy. We were always looking for angles, for opinions, for discussions. That was always the fun we had in it. And when I went to college, I was like a history major. I went to UCLA. I was excited to be there, but I found pretty quickly that I wasn't super passionate about anything. Like I was a good student and I tried and I worked, but I wasn't like really passionate. And I was passionate about, this was pre-Twitter. This was like 2006, 2007, going on message boards and getting people all riled up like I do now on Twitter. You know what I'm saying? Like I liked reading about the Niners and the Warriors, but I felt like the message board conversations were kind of lame and kind of tired and they needed someone to get them going. I was good at that. I would really get like Niners Web Zone, and Fortnite, like Warriors World forums, Golden State of Mind. I'll get those going with the fan posts, and I loved it. Like you know how Vish is right now, 21 years old, and he's on a trajectory to do whatever, engineering. But you can see he's obsessed with sports.
Right.
And even if he is an engineer, he's going to be doing sports in some capacity. So I realized, like, I'm obsessed with this, man. I'm obsessed with like the whole sports conversation in the Bay, and I feel like I'm good at it. I feel like I've been born to contribute to it. Right. And I want to. And if I don't do it for a living, I'm going to be in the message boards my whole life doing it for free. So I think I realized pretty soon that like it was either going to be something that was wasting all my time and ruining my life or my life. So I thought it was pretty obvious. And it felt like I always felt like growing up, you were going to make this decision, what you wanted to do. And I realized that almost felt like at 19, the decision made itself for me. This is what I'm going to be doing one way or another. So the only question is, can I get money for it?
Right. Were you always, did you always feel like you were good at it? Like, did you have a way of being able to utilize words to actually effectively get the message you want to get across? Or was that something that you had to get good at?
I always feel like I could argue both sides of things.
Okay.
So I could almost it was almost like an intellectual exercise, like let me argue this side if some other people aren't, to get the discussion going. I always feel like I was good at getting a discussion going. And I don't know whether it was picking a topic that was like this weekend. I felt like I had the whole Bay Area arguing about punt returns this week. And no one knew they wanted to argue about that. But as soon as I threw it out there, it kind of struck a live wire and it split people down the middle. And it was fun to discuss. And I just feel like I've been doing that since I was 18. I can instigate in a good way. And everyone comes away from it. Most people come away from it feeling like, well, that was fun. At least, Twitter would have been a lot more boring if it wasn't for that conversation this weekend. So I don't know. I'm addicted to that. I'm addicted to that stuff. Yeah. So along the way, I've also gained an appreciation for doing honest journalistic work. Like today, I interviewed a mental health expert about athletes who take time away and what they can do to avoid what happened to Richard Sherman. And that was very interesting for me and for people who watched, and I'm glad I did it. But honestly, it's not the reason I got into this industry. The reason I got into this industry
was to troll.
Talk shit. Not just talk shit, but to spark lively debate. Right. I love that. And I love bringing people in who can contribute, like you, like Vish, like Jackhammer. And then all of a sudden you have a really interesting debate with smart people, and then you learn stuff. I love that, as opposed to one of these vanilla discussions where everyone agrees. I hate those. I know you hate those too. Right.
I'm always trying to be on the opposite side of you. Yeah. And something that you've talked a lot about is just your dad, and obviously he played a big influence in your career path and just your personality overall. Can you talk a little bit about how he has impacted your journalism career, and maybe a piece of advice that he's given you that's really stuck with you that you use on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, I mean, my dad is so specific and set in what he believes makes a good journalist. And I've done my best to follow his guideline as much as I could. Like, he's so adamant that that the basis of our craft is writing. So I went to UCLA and was an English major. And I took the classes on Shakespeare and Chaucer and Milton. And I've done all that stuff. And it helps. It really does. Like, being an English major isn't going to get you any job in the world. But once you're in my position, it really helps. So I've done that. I worked for a newspaper for 10 years. I'm not a fan. I come from the perspective of a journalist from the mid 80s who's not trying to kiss up to the team, who's trying to take on the team, who's trying to speak truth to power, like old school journalism. That's where I was raised. And I feel like he's a baby boomer. Right? It's a whole different generation. Right. And I'm not sure that Gen Xers did it the same way. I mean, they were more of like inventing blogs and kind of transitioning the old style journalism to I'm very old style. And what's funny is like the way I finally got my foothold was bringing all of my dad's old school sensibility to YouTube. New school. Yeah. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Like social media and Twitter. Yeah, absolutely.
So, I mean, I've heard in a previous interview that you've done that your dad's your best friend. Obviously, you guys have a really great relationship. You're able to do a weekly show with him. You speak highly of him whenever you do talk to him. Can you tell me a little bit about kind of some of the advice? I know you talked a little bit about how he's kind of formulated how you view journalism, but what's a piece of advice that he's given you that you feel has made you better and helped you, on a day-to-day basis with your new career and how you've taken it to the next level?
Don't be a journalist. That's what he told me when I was a kid.
Okay.
I'm serious. There's no money in newspapers, and there isn't. And I think we're both so kind of like giddy at the fact that we've found a new way to make money in this industry that doesn't involve newspapers. Like, I don't know if it's advice that he's given me. He's just reassured me that this is the way to go. Don't second guess it. Don't feel like you have to be validated by some type of promotion or some type of full-time job at a national place. This is the future. Believe in yourself and don't settle for some token handout from some radio station or TV station or something like that. So I really do appreciate that. I don't know what else. I can't think of anything else on the top.
That's okay. I mean,
yeah.
Is there anything you guys like? What do you guys argue about? Because it seems like so much you guys are on the same wavelength about so many things. What is something where you've had to like diverge from him on?
We definitely disagree on the whole Jimmy Garoppolo, Trey Lance thing. He's old school. He watched Bill Walsh take his time with Joe Montana and Steve Young. And he's thinking under no freaking circumstances should Trey Lance just be given this. I think he also likes the idea of Jimmy Garoppolo too, a guy who's kind of being doubted. And you already know how I feel about Trey Lance and Jimmy Garoppolo. So we definitely disagree about that, but we really, really respect each other and get along. And we don't have the type of relationship where we're trying to beat each other or win. So we'll have like a discussion or a debate, but it'll usually end up with both of us trying to see it from the other person's perspective. And that's how we usually do on our show too. We're very, I'm just so interested in his perspective, and usually vice versa, that if we do disagree, the more interesting thing is instead of trying to change the other person's mind, is just trying to just understand the other person's perspective, I guess.
Definitely. And you can see how that's kind of bled into the way that you handle your channel and everything, right? You're always trying to learn
opposed to the normal
to win the argument.
Yeah, the normal Skip Bayless type show where people are just kind of trying to win and not really listening and yelling. We don't do that at all. And I feel like on my channel, there's very little like shouting at each other. There's actually genuine discussion, which I find to be much more interesting personally.
Right.
Like when I watch those shows in the morning, I just like, man, they're both like performing for the camera. And I feel like no one is smarter at the end of it. And I hope
it's a gimmick.
Of our stuff. It's a gimmick.
It's a gimmick. Yeah. It sells though. I mean, those are some of the biggest names like the Skip Bayless, Stephen A. But
it does. But what's nice is it seems like the stuff that we do does well too. And maybe there's another way that can work.
Right. Yeah, for sure. I'm interested in seeing. So obviously, I know your dad and you have these riveting conversations about sports. How does your mother and your wife feel about around the dinner table? Are you guys able to speak about anything else other than sports, or is that are they sports fans as well?
We turn it off. We definitely turn it off. I think part of being a sports writer and having a successful marriage is being able to turn it off, because a lot of sports writers don't have successful marriages. A lot of sports writers get divorced and they're married to their jobs. A lot of sports writers never get married. And my dad was very good at turning it off. Like he would always take my mom out for dates on Fridays. They would go out to the movies and they would always go on vacation. And if you don't do that, you're an asshole and you're going to get left. So what we do is we talk about other stuff. We talk about the TV shows we watch, or try not to talk about politics because that's never fun. But we talk about other things. And if we talk about sports, usually my dad and I will like go outside real quick. You know what I mean? We'll be right back. And then we'll, something that's been on our mind. But what's nice about the show is we get to have our conversation. We get to have and we just let everyone eavesdrop, basically.
That's amazing.
There's really no difference between our show and a call we would have on the phone, which is the whole premise of the show.
That's great. Yeah. And I think some of the things that you just talked about, you talk about any successful person that becomes obsessed about what they do, it makes it hard to kind of balance. And it seems like you guys have done a great job with the balance as far as father-son relationship, husband, wife, mother, son, all that kind of stuff, which is great to see. Definitely stuff that I think people can learn from, not just in journalism, but in life altogether. Now, I know most people, Grant, kind of see the finished product right now. Obviously, your YouTube channel is booming. You're getting thousands of views no matter what you drop. You have people just following you left and right. And I know you've touched on this a little bit, when you went ahead and was able to buy your Kia Stinger, which was obviously a big deal for you. But can you talk a little bit about some of the struggles that you had to overcome? And the way that I want you to kind of talk about it is also what you learned about yourself in what you did to actually overcome these type of struggles.
Okay. It's interesting. So right out of college, I got a freelance gig with NBC Sports Bay Area where Matt Mayoko works. I mean, they were paying me like $100 an article as I was 22 with no experience. So no struggles yet. And then within 6 months, I got the gig with the PD covering the Niners. So like my career was taking off. I wasn't getting paid a ton of money, but I got a credential covering the 49ers when I was 23.
Right.
So that was great. No struggles there. I think what happened was I really plateaued for a decade. Like I had no career growth after that moment at 23. And what surprised me was a lot of people resented me for getting that job. Like it was clear I didn't have much experience other than that little freelance gig I had for 6 months and me pissing people off on Warriors World forums and stuff, which I wasn't putting in my resume. So I think a lot of people were like, man, I had to work really hard to get I had to cover high schools and colleges, and you get a credential because you're Lowell's son. So I feel like all of a sudden the nepotism thing hit me hard. And the perception among fans, among other journalists, was that I didn't deserve that and I shouldn't be there. And I feel like every time there was an opportunity to get the next job, to get a full-time job, I was never considered, ever. Wow. So I felt like I had to fight against it. Being my dad's son, he taught me he put me on game for my entire childhood. And then he certainly did help me get my first couple freelance gigs. But then it all came to a screeching halt, and I had to prove doubly. I had to work doubly hard and prove that I wasn't a nepotism person. And really, until I got this job with Sports Illustrated, that stuff was haunting me. Every time I had a hot take, people would say, "Who the hell are you to talk? You're just here because your dad, yada, yada, yada." That didn't go away until like last year. Wow. So, that was the big picture of, I think, why I was stuck. It's not his fault. It's just there was a perception in this market that I had done it all wrong. I hadn't paid my dues. I was like everything that was wrong with journalism. And so I was really felt that if I was going to get to the next step and get a full-time job, because I was always a freelancer at the PD. If I was ever going to get a full-time job and like make enough to support a family, I was going to have to leave the market and go cover the Detroit Lions or something like that. But no one was interested in me in Detroit or anywhere else either. When The Athletic became a thing in 2017, I applied to all those, all of them. And they were like, they didn't even respond. So it was bleak times. And I'm not blaming my dad. I just felt like I had to prove myself doubly after that, for a lot of
What did you learn? What did you learn about yourself through that? Like, obviously a lot of people can kind of break under that pressure or keep pointing the finger. Oh, I'm not getting these opportunities because my dad, they don't see me as a good writer or something. I'm sure. So even though, there was that aspect, I'm sure you probably could look at yourself and be like, I wasn't putting out the best content, or there was things about me that I could be better. But what did you learn about yourself?
I learned that I'm actually I'm very resilient. I'm extremely resilient. Like I got knocked down 20 times. I took so many losses. I've gone through the whole list before, but there's a whole lot of rejections. And it was like, there was never going to be one that broke the camel's back. There was never going to be one too many. I was going to keep getting up, and this is what I was going to do. And I didn't realize that about myself. I don't think that anyone would know that about themselves unless they've been in a situation where they've been told no so many times. And my dad, sometimes when it would happen, and it would happen every 6 months, I'd put myself out there. I was trying to I wasn't just doing nothing at the PD, trying to just complacent. And when I would get rejected wherever, eventually the PD rejected me. My dad would just say, how do you do it? How do you keep getting? I couldn't do that. My dad only heard yes. He was going to be a professor. He went to Stanford, and then he just on a whim became like a movie critic. And then on a whim, he said something to Sports Illustrated. They published it. He ended up becoming a columnist. I mean, like, my dad's a prodigy. He's basically a prodigy. And I'm not. I am not. It took me 10 years of messing up before I wanted to be. But, everyone's got their path.
And then as far as like, what do you think that did as far as your ability? Because obviously you took on this new medium with the YouTube channel. And I know we've talked about it off camera before, talking about how your vision for it and why you saw an opportunity there. What do you think the stuff that you learned from your path has you've been able to put into this YouTube channel?
I got a good answer for this. Okay, so with 2016, all I wanted was the Press Democrat to hire me to be their like local reporter. So like my dad was retiring. They were gonna hire someone, Phil Barber, to be the columnist. I just wanted them to give me a full-time job covering like local stuff in the 707. I would have been so happy to get a full-time job, like maybe $40,000 a year, if that, covering high schools in Sonoma. I would have been so happy because that means I would have, first of all, that would have been like double what I was making before, and I would have had benefits. And at a newspaper, you join a guild, which is like a union, you can't get fired. So it would have been some stability. And I probably would have worked at a newspaper making 40, maybe eventually getting to $60,000 a year and having that life. And that would have been a totally respectable life. My dad worked for a newspaper. I know that life. We lived that life growing up, newspaper life. I wanted it. I was dying to get a job that would pay me $40,000 a year. I couldn't get it. And because I couldn't get it, it forced me to, why don't I mess around with Periscope? I saw John Middlecoff. John Middlecoff put me up on this. He got screwed at 95.7. I don't know if people remember this. He used to have a show. Him and Guy Haberman had the show from like 10 to noon. It was great. They got screwed. I don't remember why. So Middlecoff had like 25,000 followers on Twitter. He's like, all right, take my show away. I'll do my show on Periscope. And I would watch it. And he would have like 250 people watching. I was like, damn, I should do this. Because I was pissed that radio stations weren't calling me. I was like, man, I'd be better than all these people. I'm good at this. Call me. So I was like, all right, I'll do Periscope. And I would do them after practice at training camp, like I'm about to be doing. Been doing it starting like 2017. And they were a big hit. And I realized that me on screen is much more likable than me in print for whatever reason. And I never would have pushed myself to try new things had I gotten that job for 40 grand covering high schools in 707. That's a great job. I'm just saying that's what led me to this stuff.
Wow. When did you start seeing the real explosion of your channel? Can you put like your finger on a moment that you realize like, yo, this is a thing right now?
Yeah, I want to say like 2019. I did it in 2017 after training camp practices. I would do them after games. They were always pretty good. I would always have 100, 150 people watching. And if there was a big event, there would be more. But then in 2019, it kept building year after year. And people were waiting. Like, I've always had some very good training camp coverage. And in 2019, there was a lot of, it just built. And I could watch who was watching my Periscopes. There's a feature on your Periscope app. Mm-hmm. And that was when I was really relentlessly rude to Dante Pettis. I'm sorry, Dante. That was childish. So his sister would watch every day. And I could see it. Wow. She must have been trying to watch for it and be like, this dude said this and that about. So I was like, okay, so players are watching, their siblings are watching. I saw that the mayor of Santa Clara was watching. Like, man, this is getting big. And Robert Saleh told me he watched. I interviewed John Lynch on it. It started getting big. And then what happened was I started doing, it was taken off in 2019. And I started doing like film breakdowns too. And then I started doing this weird thing where it's called Hot Mic. And I was announcing games. Didn't exactly take off, but I did it with my homie Ryan Sakamoto, who used to cover the team too. And he was like,
Beast Rider.
Yeah, the Beast Rider. So he's like, dude, I see you got hella people in these Periscopes. Sometimes I get like 400 people. I mean, you know how we do. You know how we do. He's like, man, I see you got hella people in there. I was like, yeah, it's pretty cool. He's like, you got to find a way to monetize that, man. I was like, what do you mean? He's like, well, why don't you just send everyone to YouTube? You can monetize that. I was like, what are you talking about? That was like November 2019. And he just explained it to me. He's like, dude, you just sign up, the Google AdSense, did this, did that. And, you know, like less than 2 years later, here we are.
That's amazing.
Ryan.
Yeah. What took you to then making it inclusive of everybody, right? You started the Cohn phone. You started bringing people on. Like, I think my first interaction, or at least my first getting put on you, was I used to do those grades of each game. And I somehow came across that on YouTube, and that's how I started following you. But then I remember maybe like a year, maybe like February of this year, you started Mondays with Vish. And that's something that I think has taken off as well. But that was kind of the first collaboration that I saw you do. But what caused you to start collaborating with people that you just met through online, I guess?
Well, Periscope actually implemented a like take call feature in 2019. And you couldn't get people's faces in there, but I was taking calls in 2019. That's where like a lot of people would call in from. Anyway, there were some vets that go back. So I've been doing it since then. That's where the Cohn phone came from. But my idea of involving other people, basically, like what happened was I got the job at SI, and I had to write like a couple articles a day, and they needed videos to go along with them. This was the rule here at SI.
Okay.
And so I would just post the videos on YouTube too. And people were watching them. So I was like, man, like, why don't I? That's why I was like, why don't I post 3 videos a day and 4 videos a day? And it was working. So I was like, man, I need more content. And that's been like a bunch of people would ask me to come on their shows. And I would say yes to everyone. And the only like condition was send me the video afterwards so I can put it on my channel and promote everyone. And that worked. And I realized, like, instead of waiting for people to invite me on their shows, why don't I just invite people on my show? And that way I have enough videos to fill up. Because I was trying to go. I mean, for the last year, I posted about 17 videos a day just to get this thing going. And that's a lot. That's a lot of content. So I felt like I needed to bring people on. With the way it worked with Vish in particular was I had the show with my dad. I had the show, basically with my dad. The way that Vish came about was we were DMing each other. He's just super smart. I thought he was a burner account at first, but I just really enjoyed talking to him. And every time I talked to him, I learned. And at a certain point, I figured, like, just like with my dad's conversation, like, dude, these are too good. We got to make these public. And it was just an instant success. And so I felt like, you know, just keep going with those, and it seemed to be a good format. It worked for the last year.
Now that you've gotten to the kind of level that you are, I feel like one thing that I love about you is you're low-key super competitive, right? And you don't like overly say it, but if people are paying attention, nuance some things that you say, like, you could tell you got the elephant memory, and you're remembering all these kind of things. So now looking back, you know, you kind of talked about all these guys that overlooked you, all of these guys that were just say, oh, he's Lowell's son. You know, how does it make you feel seeing, you know, what you've created now, to where people are kind of trying to use you to gain clout now, and people are trying to work with you? You know, you just did an interview with Jimmy Ward that national, you know, ESPN and NFL, you know, .com, all these people were taking. How does that make you feel? And, you know, what is, I guess the level of not validation, but maybe validation that you feel about, you know, you doing it this
Vindication.
way? Vindication. There it is.
It feels great. Absolutely. Like, the tables have turned, and I it's not lost on me. Anytime people who didn't have the time of day for me want to work with me, it makes me smile. But at the same time, and I am petty, and I do hold grudges, and I don't forget. But at the same time, I feel like my nature, and I don't forget the nepotism charges that people put against me, and it pissed me off. But at the same time, there is something to it. I understand where people were coming from. I did have certain advantages. Of course I did. Everyone uses the advantages that they're given in life, and I use mine. But what I like to do is to pass it on, or try to, and to pay it forward. And I think I've done a good job of helping put other people on. Like, people can say what they want about how I got my start, but you can't say that I didn't help other people out. And if I was a nepotism creation, it ended up being for the best, because I've helped so many other people get on. Like Botan out in Hungary, he's now a full-time television analyst in Hungary, talking about NFL. That's a socialist country where people make like $1,500 a month. Now he's on TV. So that's a big deal for him. Jackhammer is now covering the team. He just got a credential.
Right.
He's going to be covering the team. So I like to think that I'm helping people. I don't want to be
sure.
And
I mean, I think one thing that if people are being objective about you, the 49er, I guess, fans as a whole, you brought a lot of the community together. So many of us are working together on different YouTube channels. And I just think like the level of impact that you have, just you talked about recently about you put out something about punt returners and then everybody on Twitter is talking about it. All of those types of things, I think, stem from maybe, even if it was subconscious or consciously, understanding, getting people involved. And I think that's one thing you talked about with me when we first started working is like, I want to give people a platform. I can't pay you, but I can give you exposure, and what you do with it, you can do with it. And it's great that it's, turning out to help so many people and give so many people a platform to keep moving with.
Yeah. Cause I mean, I feel like most people don't even realize that you can get into this industry, and there's no one trying to help you into it. There's a bunch of gatekeepers. And the only reason it dawned on me is because I grew up around it. And what I've realized is that, man, it's not as hard as you think to at least make this a lucrative hobby. And I'm trying to show people and bring them into the discussion. And I think it makes the entire fan experience better. I'd like to think that the 49ers realize that I'm empowering their fans and making them more engaged in their product. So even though they may not like all the things that me and you and people on my channel say, it's people talking about their team 24/7. It's a good thing.
I look at it like one thing when I was growing up, I always wanted to be on SportsCenter, right? That was my ultimate job, was being on SportsCenter. Because all you did was talk about sports. You get to watch all you do is watch the sports, talking about clips. You get to be funny in yourself. And that was just such a distant vision. Like I didn't even know how to start that. And now I feel like we've created our own environment to be able to do that same thing and have people watch. It's amazing. But I think you touched on something, and I want you to, because you're the expert, right? More than anybody can speak to this. There's a lot of people that are trying to get into this type of industry. What is the advice that you would give to up and coming people that are trying to get into this space, whether it be journalism, whether it's start their own YouTube channel and have it grow to the extent that yours has? Obviously, it's not going to happen overnight. Obviously, not everybody has the same type of advantages that you have. But to just the lay person, what would you say the advice you'd give them?
Yeah. I know I tell people a lot, start a YouTube channel. I believe that. But at the same time, it's not that simple. Like I do have the advantage of having a credential. So when I talk about the Niners, like when I do my training camp reports the next couple of weeks, it's gonna be pretty powerful because I'm there watching. And there's a certain level of authority that I have when I talk that other people that don't have credentials can't necessarily match. So when you're coming up and like you want that. You want to try to write for a newspaper and like what Jackhammer just got, this gig with the PD, that credential is invaluable. It's worth $1 million. It's great for him. It's great. So you want to try to do those things. If you're like in college, you might want to work for the newspaper and do stuff like that. But getting a job at a newspaper, it's just the beginning. It's not really going to provide you a life where you're in control of anything. You want to be in control. This is why I always use like the music metaphor. It's like getting the record label deal isn't as great as it seems, as we all know from the rappers that explain. It's not that great. You don't keep much. You don't keep any of the profits. They give you this salary, and you're supposed to be grateful. What the future is YouTube, because you keep 50% of the ad revenue on YouTube, and if you're entertaining, if you're smart, if you're dedicated, and you grow it, it's your job, it's your life, and it can pay you way more than any newspaper will be willing to. So think about it in that terms. Like I think a lot of people in the industry right now still don't get it. A lot of very talented people with 50,000 followers on Twitter are chilling, making 50 grand a year, and that's cool. I mean, maybe they're not, they never had aspirations to make more than that, but it's like you could really take control of your life.
Yeah, and I think another thing is maybe you could give, because you're talking about your first periscopes which would be kind of like YouTube lives right now, you were having 150 people, 200 people watch. That's not the normal person that's starting a YouTube channel, right?
True.
So what would be like realistic expectations for somebody starting like the
5?
build up?
If you got 5, here's the thing. When I did Hot Mic with Ryan, it would be like East Bay Chris, maybe my parents, and like Steve Moss from Australia. That's okay, man. If you start off with 2 people, that's cool. What you want to do, what I learned is you want to interact with them, because then they'll tell 2 people and you'll grow slowly. What I basically wanted to do was to find a way to differentiate myself from the other beat writers there. So none of the other beat writers were doing Periscope after practices. I had a captive audience. Anyone that wanted to watch, now there's probably going to be 7 post-practices reports. But back then it was just me. So, I mean, that's why I did it, basically, just to set myself apart.
I like it, man. Well, I'm glad you did it, because it's helped a lot of us out, right?
Yeah. But no, the other thing about it too is like the pandemic, Zoom, all this stuff. Like when I first started doing the podcast with my dad, I would I'll go to his house, sit in the same room next to him. Isn't that ridiculous? Isn't that quaint? Now, like this, all like this Zoom and StreamYard, and everyone knows about that stuff. I wouldn't even know. A lot of things had to fall into place. I don't know if any of us would be in this position right now if it wasn't for the pandemic, which is wild to think about. Right. So life is crazy, man. I think it's another thing is you never know when the door is going to open or what door it's going to be or how long it's going to take. You just kind of got to be ready. I was 32 and it involved a pandemic and YouTube. It was very weird, but I managed to seize my opportunity. Just don't give up.
Right. Absolutely. And I think that's really big is like seeing, and I think sometimes I ask you these questions offline, and what I realize is a lot of what you do isn't necessarily strategic. You're very good at like just seeing an opportunity and taking it. Like you don't overthink your way out of something. Like I remember going over YouTube analytics with you and like talking about what shows, and you're like, I don't even pay attention, man. I just put out content every single day. And I'm like, it's so simple, right? Let the numbers do what they're going to do. Let me just focus on being consistent with putting out content. And I think that's one thing that I've seen why you're so successful. You don't overthink too much. And that's funny because you talked about how you come from a really analytical background and everything. But I don't know, for me, I could be wrong, but it seems like you don't kind of overthink things too much. You kind of just go.
Well, one of the things I realize is if I'm going to do like a 24-hour 49ers news channel, it can't just be me repeating myself. That's boring. And I can make my point in 20 minutes and everyone knows how I feel about a certain issue. And then I don't need to keep saying it all day, every day. Like people will stop watching. What's interesting is to bring on people that have their own perspectives and to listen and to have a discussion. That's where I've had success. And I feel like I'm open-minded. So if someone's real good, I might change my mind on the show. And maybe that makes me a flip-flopper, but it's entertaining, I guess.
Hey man, people love to hate. Haters are views as well, right?
True. People hate watch my show, and it's great. Keep hate watching me. Yeah.
So let's talk about. I mean, you talked about maybe some people don't have ambition. You strike me as somebody who's extremely ambitious. I'm assuming this isn't where you want to be for the rest of your life as far as what you're doing. So what are the next steps in your career? Like, what's the ultimate ambition? What would be the ideal dream for Grant Cohn?
This is my problem, Sunil. I haven't figured this part out.
Okay.
I don't know. It's like, should I be doing all NFL and start talking about other teams? Or should I be doing all Bay Area and start talking about the Warriors and the Giants? I don't know. Or should I just stick with the Niners? Mm-hmm. Can I make the money I want to make just talking about one team all day, every day? I just haven't figured it out, man. And I guess my attitude right now is if I keep my head down and keep grinding, that it'll present itself again. Like, I guess what I learned from this whole thing is, dude, plans are a joke. None of my plans ever worked out, Sunil. Ever. None of them. And this thing works. I'm like, it took a pandemic and all this stuff. I really feel like I stumbled into all of this, and all I did was just kind of like be in the right place at the right time and make a couple right decisions. So I guess what I'm saying is like, I could make a plan, but that just means it won't happen.
Right.
So all I got to do is keep doing what I'm doing, and eventually it'll present itself, I think. That's my mindset right now. Maybe I'll change it.
Do you enjoy the rest of the NFL? Because I think sometimes maybe people think all you do is focus on the 49ers. Like, do you have passions outside? Like, do you enjoy watching just a football game overall? Do you enjoy other sports? Like, what else?
do, but
what
I'm not like,
passions?
I'm not thinking about the narrative of the freaking Titans. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? Like what I'm thinking, what I've been into is like the narratives of these teams. And I know the Niners narrative since I was a kid. My dad's been writing that narrative since 1979. So I know, you know, the history and the issues, the things that fans are insecure about, the things that they're passionate about. I don't know that about the Lions or the Jaguars or the Jets. And frankly, I don't care. But maybe one day I should. I don't know. Like I know more about like the Warriors than I do about the Bengals.
Right.
And I probably would have more fun talking about. But then again, I love football. And if I got a job at ESPN or NFL Network to cover the whole league, I probably would embrace it. And I'm pretty sure I would. I don't know. Right. I just don't know, Sunil.
There somebody?
I live in Oakland. I live in the Bay. I got my wife here. I got my family here. I like this. Now, would I move to San Diego or LA and work for NFL Network? Hell yeah, I would. But at the same, I don't know. And you know what? I applied to NFL Network last year. They weren't having it. So I don't know. I feel like if when I get to like 100,000 subscribers or whatever, people are going to be hitting me up.
Right.
And we'll see if I get I'm going to have to need a whole lot of money.
Right.
A whole lot of money. I'm just going to say that right now. If you're a prospective employer, we're going to need to be talking big bucks. Otherwise, I'm going back to the studio.
Sounds like AB's song, right? Whole lot of money. You can use that as an anthem. Right. Is there a person in the industry right now, sports talk radio or on TV right now that you admire or you feel like you try to emulate or that it has influenced you as far as the style of work that you do?
I feel like Joe Rogan in a sense. I like how he can bring out his guests. He gets them very relaxed. He doesn't talk very much. He's got this very like relaxed FM style voice, and he gets these really unfiltered interviews with interesting, famous people. I mean, he gets the best interviews, and it's kind of like revolves around fighting, UFC, and boxers because that's his world. But I feel like it's a great format. He's getting paid like $100 million to do it. People love it, and I feel like that's what I was going for with the Jimmy Ward thing. About to say, trying to get him to, if you want to curse, say whatever you want to say. Don't be filtered the way most football players are. They're a great team, fast, hit hard. Nah, man, say that Matthew Stafford. Say what you want to say about Sean McVay. I love that. And I guess that's, I'm really inspired by that. I think it has a future in the NFL. It's what Sean McVay is trying to do. It's what Peter Schrager's trying to do, and they're doing a very good job.
See, I would have said maybe like Colin Cowherd, because I feel like you have really great angles and different angles from how the normal person perceives the same thing. And I think you both have that like contrarian type of personality where it's different from 100 people see this and they're saying this is the way. And all of a sudden, you come from a different angle. And I was like, well, this is what I think. And, it's contrarian. So I saw some similarities between you.
I guess it's not his fault. It's just the nature of his job, Stephen A. Smith, Skip Bayless. When you're talking about every sport and every team, I feel like when I listen to him, I was like, you only have a surface level understanding of these teams and these players and these coaches, and you do a good job. But like, how much can you know? When he talks about the Niners and Kyle Shanahan, I'm like, how much can you really know? Absolutely. And that's why I feel like, even though I only do one team, like when I talk about it, people know that I have something to say and that it's got some authority. So I guess that's the only. Do I aspire to be like Colin Cowherd? In ways, I understand what you're saying. In ways, but in other ways, I feel like I kick his ass talking about. Let's talk about the Niners, Colin.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, and. Maybe we'll make this the last question because I know we're coming up on an hour with you. But let's talk about just overall what you love. What aspect do you love the most about what you do? And I don't want to say what you hate because I'm sure there's not something you truly hate. But what are you least excited about in what you do?
Oh, man. What I love most about what I do is that I get to express myself and that there's action. Like, I do like being able to express. I know it's such a weird – most people don't get to express themselves in their job. You have to have an outlet. You know, maybe you do poetry or whatever, you cook, or however you express yourself. Is you don't get, no one pays you to do it. No offense, I'm just saying to me it's a very heady experience to be paid to express myself. I love that. What else do I love about what I do? Oh, the action. Like, it's not just like I'm writing a sonnet and putting it away and be like, that was a good sonnet, and no one's going to see that. I write or I make a video, and after a game, I have 2,000-3,000 people watching. I like that. I like that. Jimmy Ward was talking about action. You know what I mean? Like tackles, and I feel that, man. I like it too. And I don't know that a lot of people get action in their jobs. People are accountants, or now, you know, lawyers and police officers. There are action-packed jobs, but I feel like I get the nice convergence of, you know, sensitive expressing yourself and freaking like adrenaline action. I love that stuff. And just like the intellectual, football especially, man, it just seems like I'm endlessly fascinated by how intricate and complex the sport is. I mean, just the idea of sports in general, these billion-dollar franchises looking for an edge and trying to win, and when a team won, how did they do it? And when a team loses, why did they mess up? And I'm kind of more interested in that, how they and why they messed up, because I'm quality control. But I love that about sports, as opposed to, here's another thing. Like, if you're writing about movies, you know what I'm saying? You can have a take and you can have interesting opinions, but ultimately the most important piece of art, or whatever you want to call it, is the movie. You know, like, criticism isn't really necessary. Sometimes you want to read a good critic, but it's really, I can watch the movie, I can make my own opinions about it. But sports isn't necessarily an art. It's raw material. And what good sports writers do, what good entertainers do, is kind of make it, I don't know, like they create the stories for you. They bring you in, they introduce you to the characters, they create a narrative. And I like being part of that exercise. I like being part of that exercise.
It's amazing. What about what you're least excited about what you do?
Oh, man. Oh,
because some people might say the hate, politics, but I think you
all the
enjoy
politics.
Okay,
man.
Go ahead.
All the politics. Like, I like interacting with the coaches and the players. That stuff can be stressful and it can be bumpy, but I like it. It's fun. It's the big leagues. The politics, man, how you have to kiss up to people, and I just never was good at it, and I don't think anyone likes me. I can't stand that stuff. And I guess what I'm so happy about now is I don't really have to do it anymore. I'm my own boss. I like my job. I'm not gunning for a new job or a promotion. I can just express myself, set my own hours, work as hard as I want to work, and not be worried that there's someone who doesn't like, man, dude, in newspapers, you have an opinion, you can have an editor being like, I don't like this.
Yeah.
No. It's like, I don't ever have anyone do that to me. It's the best. And that happens all the time. It happened to my dad all the time. I remember, I mean, especially back in the day at the Chronicle, he was miserable. Not to get too far into his past, but they can make you miserable. It sounds like a fun job. It can be the worst job. And I don't have that. So all the bad things that I saw my dad go, I've kind of sidestepped for now, which is very nice.
It's amazing, man.
Yes.
So one thing that I want to do as far as like a segment at the end of the show is kind of, I'm calling it the floor is yours. So this time, Grant, you know, just a couple of minutes uninterrupted by me, just any message that you want to portray to the audience, anything you want to promote for yourself, or just what you want, you know, kind of the last words to be. The floor is yours, my friend. Take it away.
I guess all I want to say is it's a much more accessible profession than you realize. And when I was growing up, basically everyone was saying, like, don't do it. Newspapers are dying. Whatever, you know, minuscule amount of jobs there were are dwindling. Don't do this. And I did it anyway. And it was dumb. And I really, you know, made no money in my 20s. But then the world changed. And the industry's changed, and we're changing it right now. And I feel like the future of this industry is a much more, it allows people to make money. Maybe for you, it's just a hobby and you make a little bit of money, but that's cool. It might pay your rent. Or maybe you could turn it into a career. Maybe Amin the Dream, by the time he's 23, will have 10-year-old YouTube account with 50,000 subscribers. Who knows? You know what I'm saying? I feel like in the future, it's going to be a whole lot of people supporting themselves, doing stuff like this. And that's the American dream. So go for it.
I love it. What a beautiful message to end. Grant, I appreciate you taking the time to come onto my show and, do this interview. You were vulnerable, you were passionate, energetic. I love all of it.
Hold on. I gotta promote something. They said you didn't want me to promote stuff.
Yes.
I gotta promote stuff. All right. I have a very successful YouTube channel. I'm trying to go and look into different avenues of social media. And something I've been dabbling with in the off season is Discord and Twitch. And it's kind of like a very small community right now. What I do is I have a Discord, which is basically like a private chat room. And we talk all the time. Maybe once a day, I'll go in there. We'll have like a Twitter Spaces where we'll all kind of have a discussion. And I broadcast it on Twitch, which most people use to broadcast themselves playing video games. So it's kind of like a random thing to do. But I think it's very interesting. And I think what I'm going to do is use it as maybe a discussion tool after training camp practices. So if you want to check this out, be kind of part of the Sunil's in there. Are you not in the Discord?
I'm in the Discord for sure.
If you want to sort of like get to know some of the movers and shakers of the industry and get into the Discord and have some discussions after practices, after games, during the week, subscribe to my Twitch, which costs money, but it's free if you have an Amazon Prime account. What you do is you go to Amazon Prime Gaming. I do this in like fast motion talking like they do. Amazon Prime Gaming, you sign in with your Amazon account, you click activate Prime Gaming, you go to my Twitch, subscribe, click free. That's it. And then I'll send you a link to the Discord and you can interact. It's a whole different level of interaction that you would get anywhere else. I don't know. We'll see what happens.
It's fun, and you could kind of like level up in there too. So you keep trying to figure out how to get to the next level. It's pretty
and you
fun.
Never know. I might just buy a PlayStation one day and broadcast myself on Twitch playing Madden. We'll see. I don't know.
How was your Madden game? How was your Madden game?
I haven't played since Michael Vick was on the cover, so probably not good.
I love it. Yeah. I love it. Well, I put Grant's YouTube channel in the description. If you haven't subscribed there and you're a 49er fan, what are you doing with your life? That is a must subscribe. So go ahead, get in there, subscribe. Grant's always putting out very, very good content. Once again, Grant, thank you so much. I have to say, I appreciate you so much. You have given me that extra push to make this platform, make my own channel, and connect me with the right people to make it go. So I truly appreciate you. Even though you're younger than me, I still look up to you, big dog.
Well, I look up to you too, big dog. Thanks for having me on. This was a hell of a show. I appreciate it, man. You got a great channel. Make sure everyone who's watching, subscribe.
Hey, thank you so much, guys. Thank you for tuning in. And like I always say, till next time, keep it so real.